Hi, Kathleen. Welcome. Welcome to A World Awakening.
Oh,
It's,
thank you. It's great to be with you.
it's my pleasure entirely. Oh, gosh, what a delight to have you aboard. We did a special episode tonight because I just couldn't. I'm booked all the way through July, and I'm like, I am not waiting to bring her on. We're just going to make a special time and pick a special night and make a real big deal about this. And so I'm so thrilled, and I know that our viewers are as well, to have you. And for those, I can't imagine that no one considering how much I've put out about this coming up with information from your website and all. You really don't need an introduction per se. I think everybody knows who you are. But what I'd like to do is just turn things over to you and in your own words, share what you do, who you're related to, and all that you bring to the table in a field that is burgeoning and is filling with some very strong feminine energy, yourself included.
Mm-hmm. And it's about time.
Yeah, really.
Well, to begin with, why don't I go back to early in my life?
Okay.
I was a 13-year-old, seventh grade student when my Aunt Betty Hill phoned my mother to tell her that she was concerned that she and my uncle were so close to a flying saucer the night before that she was concerned that they might have been contaminated. She said they felt clammy. They had taken long showers, but she wanted my mother to call a neighbor of ours who was a physicist to give her some advice. So that happened. Within a couple of days, my whole family was down there visiting Betty and Barney, and I had a firsthand account of what occurred from my aunt and saw some of the very perplexing evidence. So, I was close to Betty and Barney. We visited probably once or twice a week at least.
Mm-hmm.
I admired her. She was a social worker for the state of New Hampshire, and she worked in child welfare and adoption. She absolutely loved that job, and I sort of modeled myself after Betty. As I was growing up, I was so impressed with her. And sure enough, when I went to the university, I was studying actually journalism. And I told Betty about that. And she said, "Oh, Kathy, don't study journalism. You'll never earn a living as a writer. Do something practical. Yeah. Be a social worker like me." She said, "I absolutely love it." And so I became a social worker, and I didn't absolutely love it. In fact, I did want to go into psychiatric social work. Mm-hmm. And so I did an internship as a senior in college at the State Psychiatric Hospital in New Hampshire. And after that, I was married, and my husband had been accepted to study at the University of Cincinnati. They had the only program in the country that led to a doctorate in the philosophy of psychiatry. Mm-hmm. So we moved to Cincinnati, and I had to find a job and go to graduate school part-time. That's the way it was done in those days.
It was, yeah.
And I ended up finding a teaching job in the inner city. And I hadn't been a teacher. I had observed teachers. But in fact, dating back to the 8th grade, when the first grade teacher would go on her lunch break, I filled in for her while her students had their lunch. I was a Sunday school teacher with an assistant with women. So I guess I was destined to go in that direction. So I spent many years as an educator and as an education services coordinator. But something happened to me in about 1988, 1990. I became very ill. And it was diagnosed as chronic mononucleosis.
Oh, wow.
First. And then later it was given the label chronic fatigue and immune dysfunction syndrome, which was, just one of those things that a lot of teachers doctors didn't even believe was a real illness. Mm-hmm. They now know that it is exhaustion at a cellular level because your cells are not able to utilize glucose to give energy to your body. But back then, very little was understood about it. Well, I was too ill to work any longer. I was at home and I was bored. I had to decide what to do next, where I could work only when I had the energy to do so. And so I decided that I was going to investigate my aunt and uncle's experience and do as thorough an investigation as possible. I mean, it was so thorough that I interviewed Betty many, many times, went on the close encounter route that she and my uncle went on through upstate New Hampshire with her. Mm-hmm. My husband and I even went to Niagara Falls, up to Toronto, on to Montreal, and followed the route that she and Betty took on their vacation, stopping overnight where they stopped for the night. In that time frame, on the same roads, even though highways had been constructed. Mm-hmm. She gave me the hypnosis tapes, about 10 hours that I transcribed. And I wasn't a very good typist then, but gosh, I had all this time on my hands.
Yeah.
I joined the Mutual UFO Network and studied to be a field investigator. Mm-hmm. And so I could investigate the evidence, everything for myself. In the end, I had all of Betty's records, all of the files pertaining to the experience, and had just about memorized the hypnosis tapes. Yeah. And it took me many years. I didn't want to publish this book while Betty was alive. Yeah. I was working on it slowly, putting everything together, putting a manuscript together. But I wanted to be able to express my findings without making her angry with me.
I understand that.
We had a close relationship. And in fact, I took care of her when she was dying from cancer. And, I didn't want to do anything that would upset her.
Of course.
But when she did pass, I got back to work. I setting up an archival collection for the University of New Hampshire. It's at the Milne Archival Collections Library. Mm-hmm. And I made copies of everything for myself as well. I have the entire collection at my home. And more than that, because I did my own investigation, talking with the original investigators who were still alive. And so I was doing a lot of learning along the way. I finally came to the conclusion that those skeptics were full of baloney. Yeah. There were skeptics on writing in magazines and newspaper articles, on television, who had invented hypothetical scenarios for what had happened to Betty and Barney that night, and presented them so often that the general public just thought that that's what it was, and thought that Betty had a lifelong interest in UFOs, which she did not. And so they said that Betty was a science fiction fan. She was not. They said that Betty was a kook. She was not. She held a very responsible position and
profession
down to earth.
Yep.
Down to earth. And so I decided that I was going to complete writing what I had, but it was my first book, except for a genealogy that I wrote on my family. But so Stanton Friedman, nuclear physicist Stanton Friedman.
I knew him. He's a wonderful man.
He was. And so he was instrumental in finding scientists to vet the star map that Betty had sketched as the result of a post-hypnotic suggestion by Dr. Simon. And so I asked Stanton at a conference that we were both at if he would join me in writing chapters about the star map research and also about the debunkers and disinformants or disbelievers. And so he agreed to do that. But before he did, he had to drive from New Brunswick down to my house. I was living in Stratham, New Hampshire at the time. And so he stayed for a few days with my husband and myself, and he made copies of Betty's files of anything he wanted. I just let him have whatever he wanted.
Yep.
And it's now in an archival collection in New Brunswick. So they came from me, and before that from Betty. And we talked at length. We had so many long conversations that he finally said to me that he was satisfied that I was being skeptical enough and I was being scientific in my evaluation, and that he liked the transcript that I had written, and he agreed to join me. And he also vetted my work. I asked him to do that to make sure that I hadn't made any mistakes.
Yeah.
And so we wrote 2 books together after that and worked together for 14 years. The second one was Science Was Wrong. And that book was really about mainstream science historically. And those who kind of bucked the system by doing such outrageous things as telling the mainstream scientists that they were wrong and instituting new programs that were right. And for example, with childbed fever, there was Ignaz Semmelweis, and he was a physician in Austria and teaching at the hospital. And his supervisor chastised him because he had actually had the nerve to suggest that doctors needed to wash their hands after they did autopsies on cadavers who had died. And how could these wonderful healing doctors possibly have anything on their hands that could hurt their patients? Ignaz Semmelweis instituted a hand washing system, and he was fired for doing that.
Yeah.
He had even done tests proving that there was bacteria. It was before we knew about bacteria, but proving that there was something we couldn't see that was killing women who were giving birth to these babies that were being delivered by these doctors who hadn't washed their hands. And of course, the doctors were doing internals. That's just one example. From the book, we also have a section on the frontiers of science as well. And then our third book together was Fact, Fiction, and Flying Saucers.
Yes.
This is the result of archival research that Stanton and I did. He had visited 50 archives during his career. as a UFO researcher. And I have not visited that many, but I've visited very important archives where the information was that I was looking for. Mm-hmm. And so we wrote about the history of government involvement in the investigation of UFOs, their major studies, the results of their major studies, and the decision to lie about the results, to cover it all up, and why, who was involved in the cover-up, and what they did on every major case, what the truth was, and what they said. So that's what that book is about.
It's a very, very brave chronicle of events, yes. And one of the books that I most appreciate.
Thank you. I also wrote The Alien Abduction Files with Denise Stoner, who lives right in Florida, too, over in Winter Park. Mm-hmm. And she is a lifelong experiencer. She and her husband were taken together. And so I investigated that, first of all. I did the hypnosis with both of them, reinstating amnesia, just like Dr. Simon did with Betty and Barney at the end of each session. And then ended up writing the book. And sometimes I do lectures on that, too. She has a very, very interesting case that involves being taken, she believes, as early as when she was 2.5 years old. Mm-hmm. Of course, young children are fantasy prone anyway, so it's impossible to know for certain. But she has been taken when she was riding with me, we believe, returning home from a conference where some very strange things happened. And she was taken to craft, and she walked by a room and she saw somebody who was dressed just like I was dressed, and a man with me who was old and bald, just like my father, who was in the back seat of the car with us. And so that probably, it could have happened too. That's part of being part of all of this. And so I've written in the book about my investigations of various events that Denise and her husband had, and she joined me in writing her own personal feelings about what occurred, messages she'd received, and that sort of thing. And, when she was 22 years old, she had a stroke that was nearly fatal.
Wow.
But she was healed by a very strange-looking nurse who was dressed in 1940s nurses' clothing, very tall, very thin, didn't appear to have eyebrows. And she took the sheets that Denise was on. The medical staff had come in after to try to collect those sheets because she had gangrene and was expelling fluid from her body. But that nurse said, "You'll be all right now." And she was. She survived and she's fine. And so this is kind of an ET miracle.
Yes.
We believe. And so I talked about 6 different cases that I had investigated. They're all in that book. And then the last book that I wrote is Extraterrestrial Contact, What to Do When You've Been Abducted. Now, I don't like to use that word abducted because
I don't either. I use taken or visited
yes.
Because it has such a negative connotation to it that, it's like something that's happening to you against your will. And if you don't know what's happening to you, then how can it be against your will? And it just has this, there's just so much negativity associated with the word that it makes me uncomfortable. I don't describe. I know I've been off planet. I know that I've been to vessels. And I've never once considered that I was abducted. I always considered it a gift, and I'm like, no matter what you do, you can do whatever you want to do. I just don't want it to hurt, it's okay, fix me up. I had an extraordinary healing experience right here in this house in my own bedroom. That ended up being an entire chapter in my new book. They didn't take me, they came to me.
They came to you.
Yes.
They're doing that sometimes now. And in this book, I don't like the title, but my publisher reserves the right to title the book. So the word abducted was used, even though I didn't like it. But the book is a comprehensive guide for experiencers of contact. There is a worksheet at the end of every chapter. It talks about the stages you go through. I talk about some of my major cases, ranging from the highly positive to the negative. And talk about the paranormal, aliens and demons, all sorts of things in this book. There's a chapter on your vibrational frequency and what happens if you vibrating at a lower frequency, and these interdimensionals who are negative can attach to you, and how to raise your vibrational frequency and get rid of these attachments. So there are many, many ideas in the book. And if you are being taken or visited by these non-human extraterrestrials and you want it to end, there are ways that you can try to get that to end too. So it's all in the book. There's even a chapter for people who want to go public, what they can expect, what if they want to write a book, what if they want to do a radio show. So it's a pretty comprehensive guide. So you were talking about your healing. I had a healing too. I had a healing in 2012. I had been sick with chronic fatigue syndrome for so many years, and now I was having to work at conferences. And I mean, I loved it. I wanted to do it. But when I arrived home, I was in bed for 4 or 5 days, just not feeling well. And even though I was going to bed early at these conferences, very early, and missing out on all the social activities. So I was talking with an experiencer who had contact with a group of extraterrestrials, sort of a council of extraterrestrials, and he talked with one gray. And so I spoke with that gray and asked him for healing. I said, I think that you fellows probably did this to me anyway. So how about healing me? Because if I'm going to do this, I really would do much better with good health. Now, I didn't think that they were going to come and heal me. But I woke up 4 nights later. I had terrible pain in my body, the most extraordinary pain, probably more than I've ever experienced in my organs. I thought I might be dying. I said to my husband, I don't know if you're going to have to call the hospital or not, call an ambulance. And so he said, well, let me know. And the next thing I knew, I was somewhere else. I was on a table. There were 2 entities that I know were by my head. It was difficult to see just lying there on the table, but they were glowing. And the light there was kind of diffuse, but they showed me it was like some kind of a chart, or I don't even know if they were putting the thought in my head, if it was a holographic image or what it was. But it showed the outline of my body, and it showed sort of this energy running through my body. And So the organs stopped being so painful. I could see them on this chart, and they were highlighted in pink and also in sort of light green, that green that they used to make baby sweaters out of. That was the kind of green.
Yes.
Green. Yes, thank you. And so I felt that strong tingling through my body. And the next thing I knew, I was back in my bed, and I felt like I was 23 years old. I did not have an ache or a pain in my body. I felt fantastic, and I have not had a relapse since that day. I am so grateful to those ETs for healing me.
I know. I that's the exact word that I would choose too, Kathleen. I had really damaged my lower lumbar region of my back, which has been problematic for me for most of my life. And I was born with hip dysplasia. So I have, one leg that's a little longer than the other. And my sisters always like to say, have you got a porch to go with that swing? It's like, leave me alone, girls. But I had really damaged my back doing some very hard yard work at my mother's house after a particularly bad storm in winter in Georgia. Georgia has winter, and they had a snow and ice event that had taken a lot of limbs down and had done a lot of damage to her 2 acres of property. And so I decided I guess I was probably right around 60, 59 or 60 at the time, that I could do it. I'll fix it. It's no problem, because from the neck up, I'm still always quite sure that I'm only 24, and that's as far as I've aged ever. So I did not give my body the respect that it deserved. And when I came back to Florida, drove back to Florida, I could barely walk. I really literally could barely walk. And I put myself in bed, and I stayed there for about 3 days and would literally crawl the walls to get to the bathroom or, to come out and have dinner or a meal with my father. He was very concerned, and he said, I've got to get you to the chiropractor. I've got to get you to the chiropractor. And I'm like, no one is touching me. Okay. No one is touching me. And I had an experience in my room. It was I remember May 24th of 2017, and it changed everything. It was like a very large square item had been laid on the bed at the bottom of the bed, and I lay across my bed horizontally, but also vertically. I've got an antique bed, and I'm taller than the bed. So I lay sideways, and I was in so much pain. I had pillows behind me. I had pillows in front of me. I had pillows everywhere. And it just compressed the bottom of the bed. And at first I thought that it was my sister had died 3 months before. And I thought that it was her visiting. And I was just laying there listening to a very compelling interview on television. And they know me well enough to know that if I was really asleep, I'd be purring, so they should have known I was awake. And I was just sitting there listening to this interview, and the whole bottom of the corner of the bed in a square depressed down, and my feet kind of slid off the side of the bed. And I thought, and I didn't move because I thought it was April. I just laid there with my eyes closed. And all of a sudden, as though I was being slipped into a sarcophagus, this slowly started coming up my body, very slowly. And it was so hot, and the pressure was so intense that I should have been screaming and writhing in pain. And it didn't hurt a bit. But when it got just about the center of my rib cage, and it just kept coming up and coming up and coming up. I thought, oh my God, it's going to cover my face. I don't want it to cover my face. And so I sat up abruptly, and it stopped, and it immediately withdrew at exactly the same pace that it did. And the television was on, obviously. So I turned and I looked, and there was nothing visible to to my eyes. And then when it went off the bottom of the bed lifted back up again. And then I swear to God, Kathleen, it was like I slipped into a coma. Mm-hmm. I was gone. I was just gone. And I woke up at almost noon the next day. My father was frantic. And they had come back and done whatever was going to happened, but they put me out to do it. Mm-hmm. And I got up and I went like I was a teenager. I can completely relate to what you're talking about. Nothing hurt in my whole body. I stood bolt upright. My height had been restored. I was, as a teenager, 5'9.5", and my height had been restored to that. Because, we all shrink a little bit as we get older. Gravity, it's the law. And I just went bouncing out into the kitchen, and I thought my father was going to pass out. He was just walking, needling his hands like, what should I do? What should I do? Is she okay? He didn't want to wake me up. He didn't want to bother me. And he's like, what happened to you? And I just pointed up. Mm-hmm. That's what happened to me. Have you ever been hypnotized about your experience? Or what was it Denise saw on the ship, on the vessel?
I have not been hypnotized about being with Denise on that craft. I have not, but I have been hypnotized before. Denise does hypnosis, and so she has worked with me. And I am also a certified hypnosis practitioner and a quantum healing hypnosis technique practitioner. Not doing it now because of COVID, but my practice has been closed for a year, but I hope to get back to it sometime this year or next.
I can't wait to get together with you. I had a world-renowned hypnotist try to hypnotize me when I was almost 30. I guess it was right around 30. Mm-hmm. And he got actually very angry with me, and I had written him a big fat check to do what I wanted him to do, which was basically to get me to stop smoking. And, that was really the most important thing to me, and to kind of straighten me out in terms of being really disciplined about exercise, and taking care of me, because I always did everything for everybody else, and I did not always so much take care of myself, as I was a counselor and teaching and working and with disabled people and doing a lot of different things that took all my attention away from me, and I just kind of wanted to get in the right headspace. That was all. And he got angry with me, and he threw the check back at me, and I will not say his name because he is still alive. But he threw the check back at me at his office, and he said, I can't hypnotize you. You're not from here. And I didn't know what he was talking about. It didn't click what he was. Have you ever attempted to hypnotize someone and it just wouldn't work?
I've had people who are less suggestive or cannot accept my suggestions as readily as others. Some people are very, very good hypnotic subjects. Others are not. So, but most people that I've worked with, I have been able to hypnotize. I'm not going to claim that I can hypnotize everybody, because there are some people who have tried and tried and tried with other hypnotists and simply could not be hypnotized.
Yeah, I was wondering if you thought that perhaps that what there was some element of truth to what he said to me.
About being extraterrestrial
Yeah.
in origin. I've worked with people using the QHHT method, where we go to past life and searching for answers, and they usually were ETs in a past life, or they were on this planet but had a connection with ETs.
Mm-hmm. It's the most fascinating thing. You know, I had the privilege and pleasure of speaking with you this afternoon prior to doing the show tonight. And I got all riled up and all excited just to talk with you because, I wanted to know really what you wanted to get into tonight. And I had said to you at the time, we're going to talk about whatever you want to talk about. Literally whatever, because there's nothing off the table. There's no door closed in my world. But this is a world awakening. The name of the show is about what is currently ongoing. And I think that we're right smack in the middle of what, many have called the paradigm shift. And people have asked me, well, what does that mean? And I said, it's that time when everything changes and nothing is ever the same on the other side again, ever. And part of what I believe is this ongoing shift, what I like to call the holy shift, is that we will make contact in a way that is blessed, that is peaceful, that is loving. And one of the things that you said to me this afternoon that I found enlightening, you had to remind me of something that I already knew. And what you reminded me of is when I said, inexplicably, how can anybody be afraid of them? How could anybody be afraid of them? I don't get this, And you said, but of course, dear, everything that people are watching about extraterrestrials is all fear-based. And so it's tapping into that frequency, that element of, human emotion, rather than, a higher vibrational field, the unified field of consciousness, the realization of oneness, that we are all interconnected. And so I would like to open the floor for you to discuss that. You said some fascinating things that I basically would like you to repeat.
Well, I want to begin by going back to 1952, when Major General John A. Samford held the largest press conference at the Pentagon that had been held since the end of World War II. And the reason that he held it is because there were UFOs over Washington. And there had been UFOs up and down the East Coast all summer long. And what he said at the beginning of that conference is, he said, these phenomena go back in history to biblical times. Yeah. They come back about once every century, and then they leave. But he said, this century, they came back, and they didn't leave.
That's right.
And he said, we're looking into this. We're not going to be frantic, but we're studying this. But, it makes sense. If they've been here that long, which I think they have,
yes,
if they wanted to harm us, they could have done it a long time ago.
Yep.
And I think that people who are taken are very frightened. You're not expecting this. You're not anticipating it. Look at what happened with Betty and Barney. They were in fear for their lives. Barney ended up being referred to Dr. Benjamin Simon, a neuropsychiatrist, because Dr. Simon was an expert in working through hypnosis with men returning from the war who had conversion hysteria. So they had physiological symptoms that were emotionally based. And that was what happened to Barney. He had post-traumatic stress disorder. He ended up in the hospital with bleeding ulcers and high blood pressure. And so this is the reason he was referred to Dr. Simon to work with him for that. But it was all related to that UFO abduction that he and Betty had. Betty didn't have that same attitude toward it, and I think I know why. I think it's because when that craft swooped down over their car and was only 200 feet above the vehicle, Barney had to pull the car into the middle of the road in order not to be directly under that craft. If he had been, they probably would have been taken up at that moment. Mm-hmm. But he stepped away from the car, and the craft shifted to an adjacent field. He walked into that field with binoculars. The craft had descended to within 100 feet of him, and he, using binoculars, looked through those windows. He saw figures dressed in black, shiny uniforms. It was in the earliest report on this, way back in 1961. It wasn't something that came out through hypnosis for the first time. And he saw all of those individuals, except for one, turn around in unison and walk toward what appeared to be some kind of panel. And when that happened, little red lights started to slide out, two of them on each side of this oval craft. It was just there hanging in the sky silently. And something started to drop down out of the bottom of the craft. He thought it was a rope. We know today that that is the beam that the entities travel through to reach us and take us to craft on. I think it's an interdimensional. Mm-hmm. And but anyway, he sensed that he was going to be captured. He went screaming back to the car, telling Betty they had to get out of there. As he was entering the car, the craft moved in his direction. He said to Betty as he's speeding down the highway, "Roll down your window and look up. I think they're over us." She looked up. She expected to see the lights. All she saw was blackness, even though it was a bright light night. So the craft was right over the vehicle.
Right over them, yeah.
Yes. And then almost immediately they heard a series of code-like buzzing sounds striking the trunk of the car. The car vibrated. They felt a tingling sensation through their bodies, probably that electrical tingling that we feel when we're taken to craft. And then they found themselves 35 miles down the highway with memories of being on a dirt road with tall trees all around, off the highway, of a roadblock, being stopped, and a fiery orb sitting on the ground. And so that was their conscious recall. The information of what happened started to bleed through over time, but it was so distressing to Barney. Betty hadn't seen the entities. Betty didn't go through what he went through. Right. Betty grew up in a white society. Barney grew up in Virginia and Philadelphia. A whole different story. There was, practically an apartheid in Virginia in that time frame. Yes. So he would feel more threatened probably than Betty anyway, because of the experiences that occurred in his life. So anyway, she went with him, and it all culminated in my book, Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO Experience. And this is the 60th anniversary of their experience this year. It will be September 19 and 20, from 1961 to 2021. And the scientists have not stopped examining the evidence. When I wrote the first book, we had some evidence. In the past 14, 15 years, we have even more. And as technology develops,
yes,
these scientists are finding more and more evidence. I've updated the book with all of that new, fascinating information. So I hope that people will purchase it because I'm really excited about it. And they can go to my website if they'd like an autographed copy at Kathleen with a K Marden, MARDEN.com, or it is available, not autographed, on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Just go to any online bookstore, you'll find it, and probably to any physical bookstore too, you'll find it. I even read that they're going to be selling it on at Target and at Walmart. I was surprised at that. So I have to look into that. I haven't looked into it yet.
Well, that's great because then that means that it's gone mainstream.
Yes,
and that's what needs to happen. That's what needs to happen. I have, with my newest book, I've been very, I'm not hoarding it. They told me not yet. Told me not yet. So I have not put it out worldwide. What I have done is I've sold it privately to my readers, people who know what to expect from me already. And I have the only publisher and printer in the country that prints in full color interior. So it's the photographs, like some of the photographs that I sent to you today, just explode off the pages, and once it goes to Amazon, Barnes and Noble, they all print in black and white. So
yes,
I'm updating my my website so that I can sell the new release of the book, because of course the whole book's about the paradigm shift. Here it comes. Well, here it is. And so I had to experience 2020 and add a chapter to it. And so I'm about ready to release it out into the whole big world. And they said, okay, now's the time. It's good. But the messages, I don't know if you get the same kind of messages that I get, but I've thrown a couple of temper tantrums in the last year because of COVID and everything that's going on the planet and all the needless death and just for a variety of reasons. And every now and then, and I know better than to do this, Kathleen. I know better. But every now and then I'll just have a little meltdown and say, get down here. We need you. Like, if there was ever a time that we need you, it's now. And 3 times now I have gotten what I could only describe as an angelic voice. Not a voice that I recognize, not spirit, but a voice. And it comes in here. And it's always the same sentence. So, you thought this would be easy? And they're not snarky about it. They're not like, condescending or anything like that. It's there's nothing about it that, it's like a legitimate question, so Annie, really, did you think that this was going to be an easy thing for us to deal with here? And no. And my answer is always no, but I didn't think it would be this hard. I didn't think that it would be this hard. And it's been hard.
It has been.
Being very empathetic in nature, and I know that you are as well, you have a tendency to absorb, so much of the grief and the loss and the death and the despair of humanity and what we have gone through during the course of this pandemic. And it has been very difficult for me. And I openly speak about that. I don't want people to ever for a moment think that somehow I'm above all of this. I am not. I'm just as susceptible to it as anyone else is. And I've had a lot of friends who have lost family members I was a grief counselor 25 years ago at a private school. I don't know why out of 300 staff, they chose me to be the grief counselor. But the training that I underwent in a clinical therapeutic environment so that I could help the children that I was working with has certainly come in handy in the last year of my life. So I think that everything that we experience in life prepares us for the now, prepares us for our existential experience. Do you want to do you perceive yourself as having an open line of communication with the extraterrestrials, what I refer to as our galactic family? Do you receive messages? Do you receive downloads? The high pitched or the different pitches of sound?
I'm hearing that sound right now. And one time I said, "Is this just my ears ringing or not?" So I said that, and then somehow my ear started ringing so that I could compare the two sounds while I was hearing that tone in my head. And, so I get tingling in the crown chakra.
Oh, yeah.
As well. And sometimes if they're nearby, we have very limited vision, very limited visual range. I can feel them. I can feel that tingling from them when I receive a download of information. But it depends on how busy I am. If I can be relaxed and I can meditate daily, then it will be so easy for that to occur. But if I'm dashing here and there and just pretty much overwhelmed with work, which I sometimes am,
yes,
it really kind of cuts off that connection. It's just seems to be not as strong.
I've learned to, when it starts, and I get all different frequencies, all different pitches, sometimes one side, sometimes the other, sometimes both at once. And then also the tingling, and also in the pineal gland area, heat, a lot of heat at the base of my neck. And I have learned to just lay back and relax, close my eyes, take it in, and I do not know what I'm being told. I don't know what information I am being, what I'm receiving. But I do know that very often when I'm lecturing, things will come out of my mouth that I did not think about consciously before I said them. And so in that respect, I think that on this plane of action, I sometimes function as a conduit. I like to refer to myself as their mouthpiece. I just follow directions well, and I say what they tell me to. And, it seems to work out pretty well. I seem harmless enough. I'm disarming as an individual, so I don't threaten anybody. And they just listen. And it seems to open them up in extraordinary ways. I also have this ability to wrap my arms around someone, and they burst into tears. And I just tell them, just give me your pain. Give me your pain as though you're giving me a gift, your essential self. Give me that. Give me your pain. It will not stay with me. It will dissipate immediately. It will not weigh me down, but it will liberate you. It will unburden you. And in that respect, I function as a healer. And I don't know why. And it's something that has happened my whole life. I've always felt like a misfit on this planet. I don't think
you're not, because there are thousands and thousands of experiencers who are like you. Yep. I've worked on 3 major studies. The first one had only 75 participants, 50 experiencers, and a 25-person control group. We were looking for the characteristics that experiencers share that are not common in the general population. The next one was for the Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation.
Yes.
And I'm on the board of directors of that. And so I was a research consultant and helped to write some of the questions on that study, followed it through. And then from 2015 to 2018, members of MUFON's experiencer research team and I did a study. It included Dr. Michael Austin Melton and Dr. Don C. Don Derry. Dr. Don Derry is recently retired from McGill University. He spent his entire career as a researcher, a social researcher, and has been interested in all of this for quite a long time. He worked on studies with Bud Hopkins all the way back when Bud was alive. Yeah. So he worked on the study too. It was a 2-part study with 516 experiencers. So in all, we have about 5,000 that I've worked with. And experiencers share commonalities that are not common among the general population. Yeah. The ability to lay hands on and people become healed through this is one of those commonalities. Not only having empathy, but being an empath, yes, where you actually feel another person's emotions. You feel, it's very hard to be in a very large crowd, like, it is, at conferences in the vendor room. And I work at conferences all over the country and overseas as well. It's not easy when you're with people who are having emotional problems and you can feel their pain, but you do. And experiencers share that. We have that for some reason. We even view ourselves differently, yes, from other people on this planet. More benevolent. Think of ourselves as being part of something much greater than this planet. We tend to be psychic or empathic. Not empath, that's a psychic sense. Psychic or intuitive.
Yes.
And at a very high rate as well. So, we were talking earlier about abductees. Well, Dr. Don Derry administered the American Personality Inventory that would identify people in the study who had UFO abduction syndrome. And so we were able to separate that group from the other experiencers. And we asked the question, if you could end your experiences today, would you? Well, 71% of the overall experiencers said they would not end contact. It was 75% among the abductee group. So even though you call it abduction, they didn't want it to end.
No, it's as I frequently say, magic is science we don't yet understand. And I think that there's something absolutely magical. And, I've often said, Kathleen, if everything that I'd experienced in my life came to an abrupt halt tomorrow, if I never saw another vessel, if I never encountered another being, if I never had another download, if I never had another moment of certain knowing that we are not alone in the universe. It's not a matter of faith or belief for me. There's nothing about it that's in any way based in a belief system. I know that we're not alone, but if I never had another experience of it, I am so humbled and so grateful for everything that I have experienced thus far in my life, that I've somehow found the courage to share. Because I know, I cop a lot of criticism. Look what Betty and Barney went through. I mean, talk about brave. Those people were brave.
Well, and they didn't go public with their story.
No.
They had never intended to go public. They're an interracial couple in 1961. They were doing good things in their community. Betty was a social worker for the state. Barney worked for the post office. But they were actively involved in the civil rights movement, the NAACP.
Yep.
In their community, they helped to set up the Rockingham County Community Action Program in New Hampshire. Barney volunteered as the first chairman of the board of directors of that. He received an award from Sergeant Shriver, the head of the U.S. Poverty Program, for the work that Barney did through the Office of Economic Opportunity. Then he was appointed to the U.S. Civil Rights Commission, State Advisory Committee, so he was a representative from the state of New Hampshire. You don't want, especially in 1961, to have people think of you as a kook when you're that politically involved. Yes. In fact, in 1965, Betty and Barney and I were invited to Lyndon Johnson's inauguration. We received invitations because we campaigned for Lyndon Johnson. And, what an experience that was. That was one of the most fascinating experiences of my life. I'm so happy to have had that. But, after that is when John Luttrell, a reporter for the Boston Traveler, talked to a friend of Betty's who she violated confidentiality.
Yes, she did.
Didn't respect Betty's wish or Barney's wish. She told him everything. He contacted Betty and Barney, and he talked to them on the phone, and then he wrote them a letter. And in the letter, he named this woman, and he said he had long conversations with her, and if Betty and Barney were as nice as she said, he wanted to meet them. And that although he was a writer, he was not going to exploit this story in any way. And Betty and Barney said, no, we won't speak with you. We won't speak with anybody. This needs to remain a secret. And he did not care about their wishes. He interviewed other people that, thought, I guess he must have told them that Betty and Barney were going public. I don't know what it was. He talked to Pease Air Force Base, to the officers there. He even went up. The one reason I can forgive him is that he went up to upstate New Hampshire and he found what he wrote were 12 to 14 witnesses who saw a craft of the same description in the same area on the same night in the same time frame.
Same night.
Yes. They saw it. So, there are 12 to 14 witnesses to that. And but it changed Betty's and Barney's lives. They spent the first night after these newspaper articles were written in the Boston Traveler for 5 nights in a row. The first night they went to Pease Air Force Base to their friend, Officer Sweat was his name, Ben Sweat. You'll see his picture in my book. And then the next night they came down to my grandparents' house. I grew up across the street from my grandparents, Betty's parents, in Kingston, New Hampshire. And we met as a family because this impacted the entire family. Not just Betty and Barney. And thought, what should we do next? Where do we go with this? And we decided as a family that Betty and Barney should speak out about it because everyone knew already. They could no longer deny it, but at least they could tell the truth about it.
And they handled it with such grace.
They did.
I mean, truly such grace and dignity. And, for people that, sad to say, had to suffer scrutiny just because of the nature of their relationship. I've never understood the concept of the phrase interracial relationship. We are the human race. We're all one race. What is this? But nobody would put themselves out there and put themselves under, that white hot spotlight of scrutiny deliberately. They were outed, but the way they handled that, and the other side of that coin too, Kathleen, is, I truly do believe that everything happens for a reason. Everything does. And the world really needed to know what happened to Betty and Barney Hill. They were the first truly chronicled, well-documented case of quote-unquote abduction.
Yes. The first scientifically investigated case.
Right, exactly. Yes.
And I've worked with many people who were taken.
Yes, and it has helped so many people. But I still, just if anybody wanted to research Betty and Barney Hill and they just Googled them, the garbage that comes up, about, they made this up for, fame and fortune. Really? Really? Really?
No.
Are you people serious? And I think that's just so ignorant. It's just fear-based carbon unit stuff.
Yes. And, all of the original investigators said that there was no doubt they were telling what they thought was the truth.
Right.
When they were interviewed by the investigators and Dr. Simon as well. So, if people will invent anything. Philip Klass was the most prolific anti-UFO propagandist of the 20th century. Yeah. And he is the one who invented a scenario to fit every section of the story of what really happened to Betty and Barney. He substituted something else for that. He caused the public to believe that Betty had, or they had just seen a light in the sky, that Betty had these dreams, and somehow convinced Barney that they were real. He never talked about the close encounter. About the original documents show that Barney saw those figures on the craft and how they were dressed. These disinformants, and that's what they were, just completely whitewashed everything, and they attempted to destroy the individuals as well. Yes. It was heartbreaking to see what happened to Betty. And that's why another reason that I wanted to do this research. Who was right? I was young. There had been a passage of time. Was I forgetting things? Was it different than I thought it was? And so that's why I really started doing all of this research. I wanted to know the truth.
Yeah.
Precisely. And I would tell the world the truth as I found it. And, in the end, what has happened is I've collected a massive amount of evidence that indeed it was true. It did happen.
But this was your path too, Kathleen.
It was.
You're a master communicator. You were born to do this. It's no coincidence that you're a part of that family, that you have brought their legacy forward in such a credible, such an honest, forthright way. Nobody questions your authenticity. No one does. You are held in high regard and high honor in the field. Yeah. And so in that respect, you elevate the story of Betty and Barney Hill to an entirely different plateau, to a place where this is something that should be scientifically studied. This is something that was fully researched and chronicled. This was literally the first time that kind of information was compiled. You have devoted decades of your life to doing so. To me, you're a hero. I really do feel that way. I truly admire you and your work and how you have given credence to what these two wonderful people went through, and through no fault of their own, but they were chosen, and so were you. I do believe that.
Yes. Well, I suspect that Betty was taken before that experience, but that she just didn't remember it. And because we know that this is intergenerational among families.
It is.
It runs in the family.
Yes. I have a chapter in my book called that.
And the vast majority are taken before the age of 20 for the first time. About 37% believe they were taken when they were less than 5 years old.
Yeah. I wonder, I know that I could remember if I really concentrated, I'm a firm believer in self-hypnosis. I think that meditation is a form of self-hypnosis. I can meditate anywhere. Doesn't matter what's going on around me. I can get myself instantly into that space, which can be my salvation at times too, especially during really big events when I need to chill. Or I just go find a corner and cry for 5 minutes. That works too.
Well, I do a rapid induction on myself. So, if I'm having difficulty sleeping, for example, I can just say those words to myself and boom, I am in deep hypnosis. And then I give myself the suggestion that with every breath I take, I will become sleepier and sleepier. And, within a few seconds, I think I'm just sound asleep. I also do that when the entities come into the room, and there's still that, that fight or flight response. At least there was when I developed this for myself. They haven't come, as far as I know, recently. But so I would give myself that rapid induction, and I'd be completely calm and collected. And in being in that frame of mind, I was able to receive information from them, not through a download, but directly through telepathy from them, kind of face to face. And that's where that message came from, that our technological development had outstripped, you might say, our spiritual growth. And that their main concern is what could happen to this planet if we do not raise our spirituality. So that's one of their huge goals, is to attempt to raise the vibrational frequency of humanity, to raise that spirituality, so that we can evolve, we can grow, we can reach a higher level. That's what, when they talk about ascension, it is for a population to ascend.
It is. And if we don't, we will perish. I mean, it really is point critical. Absolutely. We are at a a pivotal point in the evolution of humanity. I think that all of us are here with purpose and reason to address this now. And so much of it has to do with the damage that we are doing to our planet and to each other.
Yes, absolutely.
I have been told that all of the dimensions are interlocked, all interwoven like a fine tapestry, and that when we damage this planet, we damage someplace else in the universe as well.
Yes, and that was
that someplace. I was told that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know about that because there was a woman named Frances Swan back in 1954 who communicated with extraterrestrials. In fact, she was doing it quietly with a Navy admiral, with a political figure, the Canadian government's Wilbert Smith, who was a scientist and their UFO guy.
Yeah.
And the CIA was involved. The federal government was involved. In fact, I wrote a paper that is on my website about this. And she was receiving messages about why they stayed here after we detonated those nuclear weapons, after we dropped nuclear bombs on Japan and continued with our above ground testing. So that information has been given to so many experiencers over the years, but so many have not remembered it. And I was one of those who didn't remember it until I remembered it through hypnosis. And then I remembered it after that in downloads of information or face-to-face contact. But originally, I didn't remember it. And so many don't. I don't know if it's just the strong electromagnetic field that does that, because I did discover that when one came and I couldn't see him, but I felt his presence and he was conveying information to me, I was writing it down in case I forgot it. And sure enough, I did forget it. I couldn't remember a word he told me, but fortunately I had written it down. But I think it was that very strong electromagnetic energy that had an impact on my brain.
I have a very close friend who told me about an experience that he had when he was 8 years old about going onto a vessel. And all remembered every single detail of it. And he told me this 7 or 8 years ago. And then last year we were having a conversation and I brought it up. And he said, Annie, what are you talking about? I said, what do you mean? What am I talking about? Okay, you told me it took you more than an hour to tell me the story of what you saw, what you experienced, where it was. You told me everything. And he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. You must have dreamed this. I said, no, darling, I did not dream this. Well, a few weeks ago, he was on his way to work and a vessel came directly over his car, heading from south to north. And he said it could not be mistaken for anything else. The next night, a vessel came directly over his car on A1A from south to north to south one night, south to north the next. And now he has full, complete recollection all over again of this whole entire story. And I'm like, well, thanks, because you made me think like I was just losing my mind. Okay. And yet we can't figure out how that happened or why that happened or why it was blocked. If he's the one that blocked it after he told me, or if they blocked it for some particular reason. But we are yet to examine that. We'll have a conversation about that very soon, about what that could be, why, how, that things like this happen. But I've had oh, Kathleen, I feel so blessed. I feel so graced and so blessed to have had the experiences that I've had in my life. Mm-hmm. I don't think that there's anything more important than knowing we're not alone in the universe. That's it. I mean, that's the pinnacle, the penultimate knowledge that I think that we can have in our limited frame of reference in our 3D world. But if we don't break out of this shell, if we don't transform ourselves in the same way that the butterfly breaks free of the chrysalis, if we don't, we will perish. We're just so busy trying to kill the planet that we live on and kill each other while we're on it. One of my friends who lives out in Denver, I spoke to her this morning, and I told her how very sorry I am about what happened in Boulder. I love Boulder. I'm in Boulder a lot. I've done a lot of filming for Gaia, and that's where their studios are. And I have a lot of friends out there. And so, needless to say, that moment of panic, like, oh my God, was it somebody that I know and love? Even though I felt, it would have been the same pain regardless. And I talked to her this morning, and she said, what are we going to do about this? And I guess I was in a bad frame of mind at the time. And it's so sad about it, very emotional about it. And I said, nothing. We're going to do nothing. The same way that we did nothing after Newtown and, Sandy Hook, and we did nothing after Parkland, and we did nothing after Columbine, and we did nothing after nothing. And
even
she
though
said,
90% of our population is in favor of doing something.
Right. And doing it Congress 10 years ago. Exactly. And she said, well, why? And I said, because America loves its guns more than it loves other Americans. There are more guns in this country than there are human beings. And, every time I put something on my Facebook page about that, somebody inevitably attacks me as they clutch their gun to them. I'm sorry. I'm not allowed to walk around with a hand grenade in my back pocket and throw it wherever I want to. Tell me the difference between that and an AK-15 or an AK-47 that you can kill 100 people in 10 seconds. Tell me the difference between those. Are weapons of war. We're not allowed to walk around with dirty bombs in our backpacks. There are laws that are put in place in this country for a reason. And, the cowardice that I see that keeps us from moving forward on this. I marched after Parkland. I live right here in Florida. And, that Valentine's Day sucked. That was a horrible thing for this whole country to go through. And those kids that decided to stand up were attacked.
Yes.
They were just, their lives were threatened because they dared to say, maybe we should take weapons of war off the streets of America. I don't know. I mean, there are some times that I am quite discouraged, Kathleen. Sometimes that I feel like, what are we doing all of this for? When willful ignorance seems to be the law of the land. But I never really give up hope. And I know that you don't either, because we wouldn't keep doing what we're doing.
Right.
I wouldn't even want to be here anymore if I didn't think that we couldn't turn this around some way, somehow.
I talk to as many people as I possibly can. And I've recently done some shows with Ancient Aliens and have mentioned this in the interviews I did as well. So hopefully it will carry even deeper into the population.
I hope so too, because that's part of us raising our consciousness. It truly is. It's part of us, letting go of what we think makes us powerful. Our superpower is love. That's what we bring to the table. Human beings bring our superpower, love, to the table. We just have to abandon the fear and embrace the love, and we will ascend. And it's really that simple. I don't know why we complicate it the way that we do. I don't.
I don't know either. I wish I did.
Well, we must have our viewing audience transfixed, or we've put them to sleep, because Tony hasn't put a single question up, not a single one during our entire conversation. Tony, do you have any questions for Kathleen, honey? I know you do. Do you want to hop in? There he is.
He's awake.
Awake, but you're okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, muted. Okay, there you go.
You have had a ton of content going on. There were lots of questions asked, but I was afraid that if I threw them up, because you guys were in such a great conversation on specific subjects, I didn't want to sidetrack. But maybe if the audience wants to ask a couple questions, why I'll pop them up and we can maybe give them an answer to. But I completely agree. First of all, and I just say how I knew out of your history and work you had done, but hearing it firsthand, just absolutely phenomenal what you've done and accomplished, and decided to take on that challenge and discover what you could learn and research on your own. Absolutely amazing. The other thing that kept catching my attention was, obviously these extraterrestrials have both knowledge and equipment beyond anything that we can imagine. When you were talking about the difference, you were both thought you had been healed.
No, I know I've been healed.
I know I've been healed. Yes, too.
It's not.
Exactly. Yeah. So they have that ability to do that to us. What lifespan think they have? Are we talking hundreds of years? Are we talking? If they literally the knowledge to be able to cure defects, pain, I'm just wondering what kind of a lifespan they have compared to ours. I know that's a question that's very hard to answer, but it's just something that went through my head.
Well, I could tell you that in one case, very important case that I have worked on, where the three experiencers actually had video of the non-humans coming along that beam, dropping off, materializing as they came closer to the ground. It's just incredible. That's the best evidence that I think that you can have. And so in that case, in the conversations that took place with these non-humans, they said that they had at one time lived on this planet hundreds of thousands of years ago. They said, and they looked pretty human. They also said that we had an environmental collapse, that they had the technology so that some of them could leave. A lot of people could not. They went off, they found another planet that is in twilight most of the time, but getting to their age, how old they live to be, they said that they had developed technology to keep their bodies alive longer, and that their lifespan now is about 700 to 800 human years.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
And there are other races as well. There are, according to some researchers, I've been told directly from them that there are 58 races that are actively engaged with us, planet, knowing everything that's going on, either living beneath the crust or beneath the upgraded with us. I always know out a galactic family member way, there's a certain, there's a almost like I get all sparkly. I feel all like I've just been injected with, and of course I make a beeline for them, so I can pick their brains. And I've been told that there are races that live among us, or that are, hopping in, jumping in dimensionally, that can live in Earth years when they're ready to transform. They decide. And because of, all my work and my writing about spirit, it's integrated, it's interrelated, it's correlated, that there is an element of us, a part of us, some refer to as divine consciousness. It doesn't matter the vernacular. It's that part, that essential part of round of life, per se. You can literally heal yourself. So
we wanted to know their blood type. You have about that are Rh negative. Discovered that 33
earlier would have survived in shots during her pregnancies. Mother is Rh negative. My father, that I read. And when there are, many of you are Rh negative blood factor, if almost, I would say about, according to some scientists, now there are some other scientists who dispute solid enough to make that, science.
Correct. Yes.
So, that our understanding, but, that's part of the messaging that I've got interconnected, that we are all are not all, but almost all. And then there are the light beings, and then there are partially humanoid, partially AI. They're kind of like
That's just the guards and the assistants, yes. The taller ones who do the educating, who are the physicians, etc., are considered to be human. Well, humanoid. They sentient beings. Let me put it that way.
Wow. So one other question that definitely pops straight into my mind, knowing, and I think aren't aware of this by now, but other governments have been hiding this information for the last 70 years or more. When somebody like Betty and came forward with this information, or that out, how much of that negative spin on what they were saying or telling, or ripping it apart, or trying to pull it apart, do you think actually came from influence from our own government, knowing that they didn't want this information out there?
I know it did. I've searched all the archival records. Yep. I know that in 1952 the CIA became very involved in wanting to know more about this. And this is where the cover-up really began. The Air Force had covered it up a little bit before that. But in January of 1953, the Robertson panel met with closely connected government scientists, CIA, and some people from the Air Force. And the decision was made that there was going to be a cover-up, that the government did not want people to be interested in this topic. It didn't work very well.
No, it was the worst kept secret of the 20th century.
Yes, it was. But they carried out a program where Dr. Donald Menzel was one of the originals. He is listed as having been on Majestic 12.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we know, because Stanton Friedman went to his archival collection at Harvard, and Stanton had to have approval from 3 people to view that collection. But in that collection, Stanton found out that Donald Menzel had a long-standing relationship. He was part of the NSA and a closely connected government scientist. He wrote his first anti-UFO book in 1953. And that initiative was given to scientists who were not supposed to say that this didn't occur based upon lack of evidence or something. They were to use logical deduction in order to come up with an explanation. Mm-hmm. And that's what they did. And then when there were very credible witnesses who had a lot of evidence, the government intervened, or certain individuals who were working covertly intervened in order to attempt to destroy those individuals, starting with their credibility, then moving to their professions, and even moving to attempting to drive them to suicide. Mm-hmm. And my aunt Betty Hill had a covert psychological operation going on in her own home. I lived with her when I was a college student after Barney died. She wanted me to move in because the harassment had increased. Her house was being entered and weird things were being done. I wrote about it and captured, but when I was living there, we always kept the doors open. She owned an apartment house, and I was down in the basement, and she was on the first floor. So I was just listening for anyone coming in because I knew what was going on. And I heard it was about noontime or so, maybe 1 o'clock. I was studying. I heard the door to Betty's apartment open. I heard footsteps. I thought, oh, maybe she's come home from work, maybe for lunch or something. So I went up the stairs and she wasn't there. And I thought, well, maybe she just left, just had to pick up something quickly. And then the next thing that happened, I went downstairs again, and suddenly I heard bang. I heard running. I ran up the stairs to see what was going on. The closet door was open. Betty's baseball bat that she stored there was lying on the floor. It's a good thing I didn't open that closet door. Yeah. The front door to her apartment was wide open. The door to the front of the building was wide open. The gate going in on the fence was wide open. And there was a man in a brown suit running up the street. Burglars do not wear brown suits.
No, they don't. Wow.
That's just one example where I actually caught this person, at least in action. Fortunately, I didn't open that door, but I saw his back as he ran up that street. They were trying to push Betty over the edge.
Oh, sure. The intimidation factor. Yeah, yep. Absolutely.
That I'm sure of.
And the psychological intimidation, just the manipulation.
Yes.
And that's why, I describe her as so brave because, who among us could endure that now?
Absolutely. Yeah. And then after that, Betty had one of the sort of antique security systems installed in her house that was wired into the police department. So there was one other incident where somebody went into her house, and after that, it ceased. So thank goodness for security systems.
Yeah. Well, they just didn't want to get caught. Mm-hmm. It's a frightening scenario. I don't know if I told you, Tony. I think I did, but Kathleen is going to be appearing and doing a presentation at the UFO Contact, which is in Houghton Lake, Michigan, in September. Oh, gosh. I didn't bring my calendar. I'm old school. I still use a paper calendar. I'm not afraid. I'm not ashamed to admit it.
Your audience was talking about it like crazy in the beginning of the show, and they were all excited about the fact that you were both going to be there.
I know.
It's September 24th, 25th, and yes, I guess it's September 25th. I believe it's a one-day conference.
Yeah, No, it's a 2-day. Is
it a 2-day?
24th, okay. 25th. Yeah, I should. We should have, put it. I should have put it up, but we have time.
It's on my website, so you can go to Kathleen-Marden.com, and all of my speaking engagements for the year so far are up there.
Great. There's Deb DeRoos. So she's with us tonight. I didn't want to bother her. I was going to ask her to come in for a few minutes tonight, but she's been here. Things going on. So
yeah, she's been here for most of it.
Yeah. I really do think, and I love the Star Works Symposium. Don't get me wrong. I love Paula Harris, and Star Works is wonderful. I've done other events as well. Where this has been the topic of interest for me. I'm not, like I tell people, I'm not just the ghosted spirits lady anymore, okay? I'm really talking about this stuff. And but to me, UFO contact is the most extraordinary event. It is so intimate. It is so loving. It really is like a love fest. And Kathleen, as well as I do, when we go to these events, there are more degrees than a thermometer has around the rooms. There's physicists and every kind of doctorate of. And, these people are brainiacs. I feel like the dumb kid in the room. I only have 2 degrees. Oh, that's not enough. But when you're at UFO contact, it really is contact. It's not just, with our galactic family and our extraterrestrial contact. It's contact with each other that is truly significant, truly profound, truly life-altering. And I can't wait for you to experience it. But I will warn you in advance that the last time I did it was 2 years ago. And I know this building like the back of my hand. I've been there 3 different times, prior to that, and spent the weekend. And there was a shift. There was something that happened. And in a building that's not that big, I got lost over and over and over again. And people would have to come take me by the hand to bring me to the conference room, or take me by the hand to bring me to the vendor's room, or show me how to get back downstairs. I spent the whole weekend lost. And I think it was because I was hopping dimensions. I was, in one place and then in another place, and, and it was nuts. So, so when you see me there, if somebody's got one of those squeegee attachments that, parents drag their kids around with, or they used to years ago, that looks like a slinky, there's a reason for that.
Well, I cannot wait to go to that conference this year. And gosh, I was disappointed when it had to be canceled last September because of COVID. But maybe we'll all have our shots and be ready to gather together. It's awful not to be able to hug people.
Oh, I know it. And I'm such a huggy, touchy, feely person anyway. That it's like, it's just, I went to see my mom, and I said, Mom, I don't care if I have to, come in bubble wrap. I'm coming to see you. We are definitely going to embrace. When I walked in the house, I threw a fleece over her and just pulled her into me. I said, now don't breathe. Just hold your breath for a 20-second therapeutic hug. And of course, I had already had COVID. And so I felt like it was okay. And my sister had her shots, and So mom had already had her first. I took her for her first.
Mhm.
So, we've gotten through that part of, thank God for vaccines. Thank God for science. But we'll get through this, and we'll be all touchy-feely and huggy and lovey and share our experiences and have some experiences. Nobody that goes to UFO contact leaves without having something absolutely significant and life-altering occur at that event. So I just want to invite everybody within earshot, to get in touch with Deb and RJ DeRoos. UFO Contact is posted on my Facebook wall. It's on my Buttercup Brigade fan page. And it's everywhere. It's everywhere, omnipresent, like the galactic family. So just seek it out and come if you can, because you'll never be the same on the other side of it. I can promise you that. Kathleen, it has been a joy to have you on the show tonight on this broadcast.
I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm so happy to be with you. And just a word before I go, I talked about the experiencers who had those non-humans on video,
Yes.
and I received permission today to do that presentation at the conference. So you'll all see it.
That's marvelous. That's excellent. Wonderful news. Oh, Tony, I'm telling you, man, I know you're out west, but you need to pack it in, dude.
Yep.
And you need to
I'm
come
gonna
to this event.
I'm gonna look into this because
Yeah,
I would love to see that.
yeah, this
Absolutely.
is going to be extraordinary, truly. So I just want to thank everybody that tuned in for A World Awakening tonight. I think that this was a truly illuminating and truly enlightening couple of hours that we have spent with Kathleen Marden. And I found out today that we only live about 30 minutes apart. So, she's my new best friend. She's my neighbor.
That was really shocking to
I know,
hear that.
I
And
know.
we didn't even know one another.
How did we not know this? I thought she lived in New Hampshire. I'm brain dead sometimes. But so we're going to be getting together for, coffee and stuff. And all of you can just be sick with jealousy, okay? So thank you, Tony. Thank you for doing a lovely job with the show tonight. Thank you, Kathleen. And from all of us at A World Awakening, we wish you every blessing. And remember, be the light you seek. Good night.